this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. I woke up this morning with my mind.
Hello, hey everyone, I'm Joey Sparks. This is your reminder, God's mercies are new again this morning. You know, we can't go through life very much without warnings. They just play a vital role in life, and while we're quick to associate them with a negative connotation, we must remember that warnings are ultimately a positive, especially when they come from a trustworthy source about a legitimate threat, and especially when we heed them, when we listen to them. We might view them as negative, they might sound negative, they might generate some anxiety within us, but they are ultimately for a positive purpose. When, again, they come from a trustworthy source, when they are about a legitimate threat, and when we will heed them, when we will listen, pay attention to them. The Hebrews writer takes full advantage of the warning process. He's going to have this beautiful argument about Jesus being better, that Jesus is superior to the old covenant and to any other source of competition to Christ. He is superior. But mixed within this letter are these eloquently worded, but still strongly worded, and increasingly strong warning passages. We call them warning passages, and there are 5 in the book of Hebrews. First begins in chapter 2, and then there's a second one shortly thereafter in chapter 3. Chapter 2, the warning is don't drift. Don't begin to drift. Chapter 3, the warning is don't doubt. Listen to a few passages from these warning sections. Chapter 2, verse 1, therefore we must pay closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. Now, what he's saying is the message from the Son as opposed to the old covenant that came from angels. The Son is greater than any angel, therefore listen to the message spoken through the Son. He says we must pay closer attention lest we drift. That if our attention begins to be distracted, we will drift. You know that helpless feeling of being in a boat, right? And you're just drifting and you can't do much about it until it reaches shore. It's just constantly drifting. You're not the same place you were 10 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago. It's helpless. Well, drifting is dangerous to our souls. So he says, you must decide to pay even more closer attention to this message, lest we drift. He says this, verse 3, how shall we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? See, if we stop paying closer attention, we instead neglect the message of the Son, how will we escape? We know what punishment looked like under that old covenant where the angels gave that message and it was a harsh punishment. Now with a greater message comes harsher punishment. So we can't escape if we ignore this message. So don't drift. What we find is if you begin to drift, you might soon doubt. So chapter 3, the warning is don't doubt. Don't begin to question everything because you've allowed yourself to drift. So don't doubt. Listen to a couple of passages in this warning that'll help us not to doubt. Chapter 3, verse 12. Take care, brothers, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. But exhort one another every day, as long as it is called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we have come to share in Christ, if indeed we hold our original confidence firm to the end. So don't let that confidence wane. If you begin to drift, you'll soon begin to doubt and lose confidence. But instead, keep exhorting one another. Keep building up one another why it's still called today, lest you become hardened. You can't escape this great salvation, chapter 2, and once you're hardened and you don't hold on to that confidence to the end, you will fall away from the living God. We see what's at stake. These warnings are valuable, even though they're strong, even though they might come across as negative, they're valuable because when we will heed them, it keeps us from falling away from the living God. So we need to have these questions that we ask ourselves regularly to keep us from drifting and to keep us from doubting. Do we have a set of values and a set of habits that will alert us when we begin to drift? I mean, do you know when you begin to drift? Number 2, question about this second passage from chapter 3. Do you have some habits? Do you have some things on standby that when you do begin to doubt, you know where to turn? Do you know to go to the text, to go back to the text with those questions? I'm doubting this a little bit. I'm questioning this. I need to get back into the scriptures. Are there trustworthy people you know to go to with your questions and concerns, or maybe just a listening ear? So that's the power of exhortation, he says, chapter 3, verse 13. Warnings are strong, and sometimes they scare us away, but we cannot allow them to when they come from the most trustworthy of sources, from God himself. And when they warn us about legitimate threats to our souls, may we submit to them always. We're going to look at these warning passages the rest of the week. May they bless us all to walk more closely with him. We thank you for your time this morning. It's our prayer. God's timeless word will be your meditation all day today.